So let's talk about something more serious. Like Justin Gaethje calling out the UFC for not switching out the gloves. These are the gloves on the left versus the UFC ones, okay? So it's as simple as this. They force your fingers closed like this, right? You can't straighten them. They're just curved just a little bit, okay? And that keeps you from being able to eye poke like that. Now that's a Trevor Whitman design. He has a patent on it. That is exactly what you're looking at right there. Okay, so I started asking around once I heard that about why the UFC had not implemented these gloves. And so what I found out is that apparently the UFC wanted to purchase the patent on those gloves. So the UFC wanted to make a deal with Trevor Whitman. This is all total hearsay. I've not spoke to Trevor Whitman about this. I haven't spoken to Gaethje about this. But again, these are credible sources.
This is far superior.
Dana loved the gloves. He was blown away by them. The issue is they're with a company called Diaco. That's one who makes the manufacturing products, and they wanted to own the technology because all of our stuff is patented. I went through the patenting processes. I put
So the company that makes the UFC gloves wants to own your shit.
Completely. No.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? After Chris Weidman defeated Bruno Silva via TKO that was all started by a vicious eye poke, many conversations sprung up again about the gloves in the UFC and MMA in general and how terrible they are. One of those people that brought up these conversations was Justin Gaethje, as his coach, Trevor Wittman, has a much superior glove for MMA and boxing and headgear. He produces some of the best equipment for MMA. Go and get his stuff if you are an MMA athlete. Great products. One of the people that brought up the topic about eye pokes in the UFC and why they have not been remedied is Jesse on Fire. I love his channel. Go ahead and give him a follow on YouTube. But Jesse on Fire brought up the fact that Justin Gaethje absolutely blasted the UFC for having inferior gloves to his coach Trevor Whitman and how they should be using his design. According to Jesse, it is hearsay or rumors that the UFC does not want to license the gloves from Trevor Whitman, but wants to purchase them and own them. He called it a rumor or hearsay, whatever the exact terminology was. Doesn't matter, but this video is mostly to respond to Jesse on Fire's comments saying that he heard it from a couple sources that he didn't confirm with Justin or Trevor, but there's no need to confirm any of these supposed rumors. We heard it straight from Trevor Whitman's mouth and Justin Gaethje 4 years ago on the JRE podcast. Trevor Whitman has made it well known that he has far superior gloves. Joe Rogan himself agrees that they're far superior, and the UFC has yet to deny any claims that Trevor Whitman offered them to license them, and they refuse. So within 4 years, Trevor's been saying the exact same thing. The UFC has made no comments. Jesse said that he wanted to withhold his opinions on why the UFC is continuously letting eye pokes happen because they want to own the patent. It's basically a business decision and not something that is best for the fighters, but is best for the pocketbook of the UFC. But with all that being said, more than 90% of you, 99% of you that continuously watch my channel have yet to subscribe. I see it in the analytics. If you could please hit that sub button, thanks. I would appreciate that. Please like, subscribe, comment down below, hit that notification bell so you never miss a clip. But with that being said, let's get to Jesse's short clip that he dropped on April Fool's and see if we can't, break it down and possibly put some of the clips in from the Trevor Whitman and Joe Rogan podcast that they had with Justin Gaethje. Let's get to it. All right, let's go ahead and watch the clip in its entirety, and I'll give my commentary in between.
Let's talk about something more serious. Like Justin Gaethje calling out the UFC for not switching out the gloves. Okay, so look right here. Top tweet. Too bad UFC don't want to change those shit gloves. Okay, so what is he talking about? Obviously, he is referencing the fact that, what's his name? Matt Weidman, Chris Weidman. God, I always say Matt Weidman, dude. Chris Weidman, I poked his way to victory the other night. Now, everybody is hammering him for that, but I got to be honest, dude. He looked great. He's coming in a really, really challenging situation, and he did awesome. And, I really hate the fact that he's getting hammered for this because, the guy was up against the wall in a way that most people can't understand. He's 39 years old. He's fighting for his life in there. He fought a great fight. He won handily, and unfortunately, he is a guy who goes like this instead of like this. You know, he just goes like that, and you know, you get eye poked, dude. It's like, or you poke other people's eyes. Now, the reason that Justin Gaethje is talking about this is because Trevor Whitman has designed a set of gloves, right? Most people know about these. As a matter of fact, let me pull these up. That protect people's eyes from this exact type of problem. Okay, so let me show you what they look like. They look like this. All right. So these are the gloves on the left versus the UFC ones. Okay, so it's as simple as this. They force your fingers closed like this, right? You can't straighten them. They're just curved just a little bit, okay? And that keeps you from being able to eye poke like that. Now that's a Trevor Whitman design. He has a patent on it. That is exactly what you're looking at right there. Okay, so I had always assumed that there must be some kind of issue with those gloves that is making the UFC decide not to do it, right? Like, it's like, okay.
And why the UFC doesn't adopt this glove.
I
love you.
Hey,
I
I spent 2 years there, and again, Dana gets it. I don't want to sell this to the UFC. I would much rather give it to Dana. I feel like Dana helped grow this industry what it is.
So maybe having it's something about the grappling that makes it more challenging. If you can't straighten it, maybe there's something about making grips that's a problem, so on and so forth.
The only thing I don't understand when he's saying this section of it, where he's talking about the grips, if you trust, you know, I know Jesse on Fire. He's stated many times that he's a jiu-jitsu practitioner, but if you listen to Joe Rogan, he's talked many times about his teacher, his jiu-jitsu trainer, teacher, his instructor, being Jean-Jacques Machado, which has, I do believe he doesn't have fingers, or he's missing parts. He only has his like fingers missing, and he only has a thumb. And a lot of the like underhooks and overhooks and underhooks that were leading, it kind of came from him because he couldn't actually grip the gi. So his underhooks and the way he his jiu-jitsu game was based a lot off of underhooks and overhooks. So having that arch already designed, if it is for MMA, would actually be better since you're already in that clasping motion. You know, I know Joe Rogan has talked many times about Jean-Jacques Machado and how a lot of his style translated well to MMA because it wasn't a gi holding heavy style of jiu-jitsu,
etc. Right. So I'd always assumed there had to be a reason that was a functional reason why the UFC was not taking on those gloves. So I asked Anthony Smith about the gloves, right? And I was like, dude, so what, like, because, Anthony's a black belt jiu-jitsu, obviously he knows, and he's used them, and I was like, look, so are those Trevor Whitman gloves, do they inhibit you from anything related to grappling? He's like, not at all. I was like, really? He's like, not at all. He's like, they don't inhibit anything. He's like, they're awesome. And I was like, huh.
This is what happens with fighters, and anybody who's worn and fought with gloves like this. They put this on, they get the strap on, and they also have a hand wrap underneath this. So what happens is when you go to make a fist, go ahead and make a fist. Notice that it's hard to do this, and when you do this, you start getting a lot of pressure in between your fingers here, and that's a huge thing that fighters feel. What's his name? Rob Monroe actually has he's one of the cutmen. He has a wood tool that's the end of a hammer that stretches these out because the pressure it puts right here. Okay, it's also hard to make a grip. So when you go to make a grip here, it's tough because it's a gardening glove. It's got all these straight finger pieces here, so you're packing all this material here.
And then as you squeeze it, it's hard. It's
hard.
Constantly, you have to use your forearms
at the end of the fight. That's what everybody talks about.
It's
Again,
this.
I haven't had the experience.
Right.
Turning over your punches is where it really gets you.
So when you put this on, and I want to kind of explain this. This is the right hand.
And he also told me that Trevor has a boxing glove that has some different design. He said they're the best boxing gloves he's ever put on. So
Trevor Whitman's products are, I believe they're called Onyx, if I'm not mistaken. Onyx MMA gear, Onyx boxing gloves. I'm not sure I make the headgear. Pretty sure it's called Onyx. I'll tag them in the description, and maybe I'll put a little clip right here of like the website. But I do believe that's the name of the brand that Trevor Whitman has put out.
If you're a fighter and you want some new boxing gloves, apparently those are the bomb, according to Anthony. Super credible. Okay, so I started asking around once I heard that about why the UFC had not implemented these gloves. And so what I found out is that apparently the UFC wanted to purchase the patent on those gloves, right? So the UFC wanted to make a deal with Trevor Whitman. This is all total hearsay. I've not spoke to Trevor Whitman about this. I haven't spoke to Gaethje about this. But again, these are credible sources that I've spoken to. And essentially, the UFC wanted to buy the design to the gloves. And Trevor Whitman's like, no, he just wants to license them to the UFC. UFC doesn't want to make that deal, so they didn't make the deal. Okay. So that is what I've heard is behind this decision not to switch out.
The thing about it is whoever told him that, I'm not sure if he didn't speak, or especially a guy like, Anthony Smith should have been like, hey, listen to the JRE podcast with Justin Gaethje and Trevor Whitman. They give you a 2-minute, 5-minute breakdown of exactly what's going on, what happened. Trevor Whitman wants to keep the pen, keep the license, because he wants to make it available to all MMA platforms across, across the world, essentially. Make it available for PFL, make it available for Bellator, make it available if the UFC buys the patent. They are going to limit who can use it. Since Trevor does have the better design.
So they wanted to own the technology, and that technology that I have, the internal strapping system, is actually a technology that can go into any sport and is used in all my equipment. So I was like, dude, I can't just do that for the fight glove. And again, I want this in all organizations.
Right.
It's a business strategy. It's a business deal. It's all about money. It's about X's and O's. They own the patent. They don't have to license it to anybody. Or if they do, they would get a licensing fee. That's why other organizations can't use the octagon shape, because it is a license, trademark, or it is something that the UFC owns. So other companies can't use the actual octagon design.
The gloves. If the UFC denies it, then I'm in no position.
That video, that interview with Trevor and Joe Rogan is over 4 years old. So they could have disputed at any time. Like, no, Trevor doesn't want to play ball. He doesn't want to. We agree. We do want to license it. Dana White does not make decisions. He won't speak on something unless it's going to make him and the UFC seem better. So if he speaks on, we are not trying to, license the gloves from Trevor. We want to own them, which Trevor would take a huge hit. He knows the value of the gloves. He knows they're superior. Dana White and the UFC are not making a choice for improving the health, improving, and one of the main things that Justin Gaethje brings up in the, and I recommend everyone go watch the full interview. It's awesome. Is that because the UFC gloves make you want to extend your hands, want to extend your fingers by the design, a lot of UFC fighters feel more than anything is forearm fatigue, because they're so tired, exhausted by the end of the fight, because they're trying to make a fist when something's trying to open up. So their forearms are literally being blasted, not just by it is making it more difficult to make a fist. So Justin Gaethje states that by the end of the fight, their forearms are on fire.
You start getting a burning in your forearms just to make a fist. You're constantly fighting against yourself just to make a fist. It's constantly pulling you open.
The natural thing for those gloves.
They don't sit back in the locker rooms and deal with what goes on with the fight gloves, how your arms get tired.
They don't even know their gloves suck. They have no idea their gloves suck.
They have no idea.
No. To say whether that's true or not true, what I can tell you is that absolutely on anything you want me to swear on, that is what I was told, was that the UFC wants to buy the entire design, buy the patent, and Trevor does not want to sell the patent. He wants to keep the patent and license them to the UFC. So if that is true, I have to say, dude, that's a tough decision to defend, man. When athletes are getting their eyes poked and sometimes getting hurt. I mean, dude, Bisping lost an eye, not to an eye poke, but, guys are getting their eyes poked.
And here's the main thing. If the UFC knows that it would improve the fights because the fighters are not, imagine a baseball, football, any of these leagues designed a helmet that put pressure on their skull so they were getting more concussed. It's not exactly one for one, but if you constantly are fighting if a fighter has to not only fight your opponent, but fight with the equipment because they're trying to force their hand to clench, to hold tight, to make a fist, it's not making it easier. It's impeding. And Trevor Whitman brings up a good point that there's been zero testing done on the MMA equipment because they're like, hey, go out there and bleed or whatever. It's like, you're a fighter, who cares? But in every other sports league, rigorous tests are done to all equipment around, cleats, shoulder pads, knee pads, neck braces, helmets, all that stuff, gloves. It's all being tested all the time to make sure that it's up to a standard, whether it's either helping or hurting, whether it's a net positive or net negative. But that's all I wanted to share for now. I think a little bit of research should have been done more than just saying, oh, I heard from reliable sources. Reliable sources should have said, no, go ahead and watch the JRE, interview with Trevor Whitman. He breaks it down. But I love Jesse on Fire. Great channel. He's hysterical, funny. I love the guy. Go ahead, subscribe to him. Give him a huge following. And that's all for now. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment down below. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a clip. With that, later.